Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Everyday Tactical Vids. Thanks as always for checking out the videos. Today we're going to look at this knife right here, which is the Coyote Creek Knife Company Nessmuck. The Coyote Creek Knife Company Nessmuck. Cool knife. I started to follow these guys on Instagram probably like, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, and saw a bunch of their knives, was always interested. We talked a little bit about doing a review at one point, and then I was like, I'm just really booked, so let's hold off. This one popped up on Instagram, and I was like, yes, let's review that one. So very cool knife. What we're going to do here is talk in the studio about it, but I'm going to roll in a ton of footage of me out in the woods using this knife. I've had it for probably, I would say about 3 months or so, maybe 2 months, and I've used it in a variety of different settings in different ways. Cool knife, as you can see. I mean, just a handsome blade. This is custom made, and yeah, lots of options when it comes to not only the knives they make, but also the types of features, finishes, all those types of things. So let's readjust the camera, and then what we'll do is I'll give you the specs on the knife. We'll roll in some of that footage. I'm going to tell you a lot of the things I like about the knife, and the one thing you should know if you're going to purchase this knife or other knives from the Coyote Creek Knife Company. Okay, so some of the details. Again, this is the Nessmuck. He's got a wide variety of knives. He's got a Camp 4 and a Camp 5, a small fighter, a large fighter, Rhino skinner, Rhino light skinner, full custom orders. I mean, he's just got a ton of different options. So let's look at the Nessmuck here in particular. Got my measuring tape out. End-to-end length, you're looking at about 10 inches as far as your blade. As far as your cutting, as far as the steel, up to the handle, you're looking at about 5.5. As far as your cutting edge, 5.5, but you got that curve in there, so you're probably talking more about 6 inches. Obviously, this is a Nessmuck style. There's tons of different options. He's got burls, he's got micarta, tons of different options for handles. You can see we've got that cool Hammond finish, and I'll just give that to you in the light a little bit so you can see what that looks like, and on the other side. And I gotta be honest with you, when I first saw that finish on some of the other knives, I was like, yeah, that's cool. But then I saw it in the Nessmuck, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's jump into that. You can see, I mean, this thing has definitely been worn. It's been dinged up there, a little bit of, it's probably some of the leather on the from the sheath on the handle there, and that this has definitely been used pretty aggressively. It is 1095. That's your steel, so you got to make sure you take care of it. Actually, after I took mine out for a bit, it got a little bit rusty, so I had to clean it off a bit. I used some of the, I think it's turtle wax, like chrome finish, and it removes corrosion, so that worked great. You can even see I got a little ding there on the bottom of the handle as well. I was looking through some of our earlier correspondence, and he did note that he goes through a 6-step process to really refine the grain, particularly with 1095 and a couple other steels. But this thing is held up. I used it quite aggressively, as you'll see in the footage here, and I haven't resharpened it, and it still remains, you know, quite sharp. Let me show you the knife from end to end here real quick. You can see CCK. So Coyote Creek Knife Company. Let's look at your handles. Flip it to the other side, we'll come back this way. Just a beautiful, beautiful knife. Really cool. There's a look at your spine. You see that spine's kind of beat up too from all my work with the fire steel and other things I was doing. Here's a look at your sheath. It is leather. He does give you a couple different options. I think the other main one is Kydex. I went with leather because I like that style of sheath for a Nessmuck. It is nicely built, solid. It is, as you can see right here, a little more loose than I would like, but you know, I just got to basically you know, readjust the sheath to get it a little bit more snug and reshape it, remold it a little bit. But yeah, it's nice. It's simple. It does the job. And for a knife that is really nicely made, but doesn't have tons of bells and whistles, I want something that's pretty cut and dry as far as a sheath. So this one is, this one I think does the job for me quite nicely. All right, guys, so we talked about the knife. You've seen it in use with some of that footage. Now I'm going to give you basically my summary of this knife from end to end. We're going to start down with the lanyard hole and the handle and work all the way to the tip and talk about some of the things I like. And again, that one thing I want to let you know about this knife. When it comes to the one thing I want to let you know about, it's the handle. There's nothing wrong with it. The ergos are generally quite good. It's just that for me, with a large size hand, I find this handle a little bit too small. So I contacted Coyote Creek and said, hey, do you do larger handles? And they were like, yeah, you just need to tell us, and when we make them, we'll make a bigger handle for you. So I would, you know, for me with a large size hand, I would have just gotten a slightly larger handle for this. Again, you could see my hand's washing out a little bit there. Let me readjust. You can see my hand fits, but I'd like to have just a little bit more on this end, a little bit more space between my hand and the blade. Still, it worked. It wasn't like I was like, oh, this is so uncomfortable, but I just like to have this handle bigger. So that's the one thing I want to mention to you guys as far as a heads up. If you've got medium-sized hands to small hands, and maybe even slightly bigger than medium, moving toward large, I think this handle could be good for you. If you got large-sized hands, I would ask, hey, can you give me a larger size, a larger handle? I think it's the fighter knife that is just generally a larger knife for them, and so I'd like to see that size handle on this knife if I did it again. The other thing I want to mention is the lanyard hole. You can see, looking through it there, it's just too small for paracord. You know, if you really compress it and found some way to force it through, you could probably do it. It's better for like bank line size, but I'd just like to see the lanyard hole a little bit bigger. For me, it's not a huge issue with this knife because lanyards are when I'm holding back like this and doing some aggressive chopping. This is not a chopping knife, so lanyard is not something I really need or want on this knife, but I'd like to see that as a change for future versions, just so you could put a lanyard in there if you wanted to. All right, now that said, about the handle, again, the ergonomics are good and no rough edges. There's nothing that I'm holding on to that's like beating up my hand because it's not rounded off or smoothed out. It's just the ergos are quite good. You can see the swell there. Again, for me, it falls, let me hold it up like this. I'd like to see it fall a little bit lower, and if the handle was a little bigger, that would work. But still, using this to carve and cut and do a bunch of tasks with it, it wasn't bothering me. So overall handle, good looking. Let's talk about the blade now. That sweeping, you know, angle for a Nessmuck is just going to be great. Great slicer, feather sticks. It's just a good utility knife for being in the woods. It's going to be a little bit of work for you to sharpen it, and you got to get comfortable with that. But again, I think overall, that style of blade is great for just kind of overall use in the woods. Not super aggressive work, but you could do some small batoning and some light chopping, but you know, just the general things you're going to use a knife for in the woods other than those heavy tasks. I really like that style of blade. Again, I mentioned that ham and finish. At first I was like, on some of the other knives. I saw this and I was like, I really like that. So that's a preference thing. I do like that they have their initials there, the little logo there, Coyote Creek Knife Company. The spine is not 90 degrees. You can probably see it's a little beat up there. You did see that I did off the tip of the knife get the fire steel to work, so that'll work. But the spine you could certainly scrape with. It's not 90 degrees, so if you want a 90-degree spine, you may actually be able to ask them for that. But as it currently came, it wasn't a 90-degree spine. Wasn't a 90-degree spine. I love the tip, aggressive, good for piercing. You know, if you had to get like a bow drill divot started or something like that. And if you'll look, it's kind of hard to see here, but it's really nicely centered with the knife. So it's not like, you know, it's kind of canted off to the side and you got to hold your hand weird. It's nice how it's like how it drops like that. So who is this knife for and how would I use it? This to me is a camping, a woods, a hunting, and a bushcraft knife. For some people, when they think of a bushcraft knife, you think of that, you know, big round handle that you can get a really, you know, solid grip on. Doesn't have a lot of contours, but I found this one comfortable enough to use, and I think more and more people are seeing that Nessmuck style blade actually does have a lot of utility in carving and cutting tasks when you're out there in the woods doing bushcraft type things. So yeah, that's what I would use it for. $10.95 for the steel is, you know, it's a great steel for being out in the woods, as far as you got to clean it up so it doesn't get wet and then rust, but it's going to keep an edge, it's going to be relatively easy to sharpen, all those types of things. So that's how I would use this knife and who I would recommend it to. I do want to mention as we close here that in March of 2014 is when the Coyote Creek Knife Company started, and by October he was going full-time. So he's obviously doing something right. Check out his website, coyotecreekknifeco.com, and then he's on Instagram as well, and you can message him there as far as orders or questions or things like that. I've got links and information down in that description section, so you can head over to the Coyote Creek Knife Company. And as always, thanks for checking out the videos. Got a couple more queued up for you right here. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Everyday Tactical Vids here on YouTube. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Check us out on Instagram and Tumblr as well. More videos coming soon. Take care. If you purchase this knife or other knives from the Coyote Creek, if you're going to purchase this knife or other knives from the Coyote Creek, freaking A.